Hi everyone, Roman Jenkins here. I had a lot of fun doing the RQ-170 Sentinel program a couple days ago, and I wanted to continue doing current event Let's Learns for maybe a little while. I think that's kind of interesting to do. So I wanted to talk today about the payroll tax cut that is currently gripping Washington, the debate over such. If you haven't been paying attention for a long time, I'll take you back a little bit. In 2009, as part of the stimulus, President Obama put a tax credit for working families in there. It was called the Making Work Pay tax credit. It expired in 2010, or the end of 2010, and it was seen as, well, actually, it was the biggest tax cut in the history of the U.S. Forget the Bush tax cuts; this was bigger. So, because of this, a lot of people feel the economy was able to continue on even if it was sputtering through that period because it was putting money that went into people's pockets. Generally, when you give the middle class a tax cut, they will be spending it pretty much very quickly, especially if it's middle to lower class getting it. So, this tax cut was seen as a good thing by most economists, and the Democrats wanted to continue it at the end of 2010. But they needed a method to do this that wasn't going to be considered a second stimulus because at the time they had already lost the 2010 elections and they were a lame duck Congress, and they really couldn't. The Republicans really held all the keys on a lot of things, especially in the Senate, where they still hold a lot of the keys despite being in the minority. So the Democrats had to negotiate for a couple things at the end of 2010. One of them was a continuation of long-term unemployment benefits, once again seen as a good thing by economists, a good spending of government money, creating some sort of tax cut for the middle and lower classes, and as a Republican thing, they had to figure out what they were going to do with the Bush tax cuts. And what eventually happened was they got a 2-year extension on the Bush tax cuts, they got extension of unemployment benefits, and they got a payroll tax cut. Now, the payroll tax isn't something you probably think of on a regular basis. When you look at your social or your checks, and you look at some of the deductions you have, part of it is going to go to sort of Social Security and Medicare. This is known as the FICA area. You take 6.2% of your income and 1.72 or 73% of your income to Social Security and Medicare, respectively. So the idea was they would cut 2% of that from Social Security, so down to 4.2% for the year, and put that money directly into people's pockets. This would generate about $1,000 for a working family, which was about what the Making Work Pay tax credit provided. But it would do it on a continuing basis through the year instead of in a tax credit at the end of the year. So this was seen as a really smart move, possibly one of the better options the Democrats had at the time to make sure there was some sort of stimulus continuing. But Republicans didn't like it very much, and if you watch the political debate over the last year, there's a lot of talk about Social Security and how it's going to be defunded, and so on. And this is because Social Security basically footed the bill and took a lower revenue over the course of the year. But right now, the debate is over whether to continue it or not. And obviously, most Democrats want to continue it. Surprisingly, some Republicans want to continue it as well. You wouldn't know it from the way they're debating at this point, and I'll explain that later on. And it looks like it's going to happen. It's just going to be how much of a deal has to be made. Now, the reason I'm saying Republicans don't seem to want it to happen is because a sizable amount of their caucus is basically saying they can't take it. And the leadership of their caucus is trying to package it with something President Obama has said he will veto if it appears there. And this is mostly in the House of Representatives, where they're trying to get the Keystone XL tar sands pipeline that was originally supposed to be signed off on by President Obama. He probably would have done it a few weeks ago. It got delayed because there's going to be a study on rerouting the pipeline or the environmental impact in some areas in Nebraska. But the Republicans basically wanted that to be part of it, along with a few other provisions that Democrats wouldn't really accept. But they have the votes in the House of Representatives to simply pass their bill and go home and make it so the Senate has to debate their bill and nothing else. And President Obama would then veto it and kill this tax credit. But in the Senate, there have been a few options floated as possibilities for what this tax credit would look like going forward. Harry Reid, the Senate Majority Leader, for those of you not in the know, has floated the idea that the tax credit would actually go from being a 2% tax credit to a 2.9% tax credit, or 3.9% tax credit, and drop even more significantly the amount of taxes taken out of your weekly paycheck in hopes that this would stimulate the economy even faster. It would be paid for by a surtax on millionaires, which is to say, for each dollar over $1 million somebody earns in a year, there would be an extra tax assessed on it. Because the number of people who make over $1 million a year is relatively low compared to the number of people who would actually benefit from this income tax. Mind you, it hits about 160 million people in a country of 300 or so million. So that's estimates. So it might be more, might be less. But with this in mind, and by the way, that's mostly because of the limit of how high money gets collected on Social Security. Social Security and Medicare only tax income below $106,800 a year. So the idea there for the Democrats is to increase the amount of money coming back through and pay for it through income tax increase on people making over $1 million a year. Republicans have floated several ideas. One includes bringing back a tax credit. A few others have suggested cutting programs that have been a theme to Republican ideas for a few years. But none of those seem to be able to gain traction simply because the caucus is a little fragmented on it, as some don't even believe in continuing the tax credit. Democrats, liberal Democrats especially, have made the case that continuing to take this money out of Social Security may actually hurt the Social Security fund over the long haul. But because Social Security is currently running a $3.2 trillion surplus, most Democrats believe they can take it for at least another year. Now, the long game on this is the idea that in 2012 there is going to have to be a renegotiation of the Bush tax cuts as they pushed this off for a year. And the concept is that at that point in 2012, if this is approved and the economy is improving, it'll bring Republicans to the table to discuss a complete overhaul of the tax system in the country, something that could be done to avoid the automatic sequestering of funds that was pushed through during the debt ceiling debates in the summer and through the failure of the super committee a few weeks ago. This is seen as possibly the long game for the Democrats, but it's questionable how well this will work because it'll be another lame duck Congress in 2012, and Republicans who lost their seats and Democrats who lost their seats may be less willing to negotiate because they think they can get a better deal out of it in the next year with a more Republican or more Democratic Congress. So I hope everyone learned something today. Bye.